is live Monday through Friday, 12 noon and beyond at Eastern Time at various venues. This is a live program, and in that capacity, of course, I take calls. And you can join the conversation here by dialing 617 396 4958. That number again is 617 396 4958. And among the venues that carry the program besides YouTube, I'm on Twitch, DLive, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, VK, Picardo, Dailymotion, and Trovo. And then the program archives on other various sites, including through Podomatic. The program automatically goes on to iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and a lot of other venues. So it's a very interesting development in terms of what a regular Joe like me can do, a former radio talk show host, in terms of getting back up on the air and doing the thing that I love, which is talk radio. And the thing that I particularly love about talk radio, and the thing that attracted me to this great hobby, and my wife keeps reminding me it's a hobby, and it is that I can take calls. Hello, thank you. Nice to see you as well. I can take calls. I can hear what's on your mind. Now, I was rummaging through some old files of mine, mainly because I'm in the process of moving and we're going through some old stuff. And I discovered the absentee ballot information as a Massachusetts voter. And I was looking this over, and it reminded me, and it refreshed my memory, in that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has very high standards when it comes to absentee voting. They did not do like some of the other states did, particularly the so-called battleground states, if you get my drift, in terms of mailing out tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of unsolicited ballots. And by the way, one of the functions of the Maricopa County recount, besides finishing the actual count, which they have now completed, and they're doing yet a third count to make sure that everything is absolutely in order. That way, once the results are released, the charge that there's something questionable about it will really be refuted. But the other aspect to it is the canvassing. In other words, they're going out and they're checking on the origins. They're looking at whether or not the vote originated at the location it was supposed to originate at. And I don't know about, there's no hard information yet out of Arizona in terms of problems in that regard, but there certainly are reports of that in Georgia and in California and other states. In fact, in California, it turned out that 3,000 ballots were sent to and returned from, or at least we allege they were sent to, the University of California in Santa Barbara, which means that 3,000 votes emanated out of that university in the election of 2020. And yet the fact of the matter is that the University of Santa Barbara was closed due to the pandemic. There were no people there. So those 3,000 votes were invalid. Let's put it that way. They were fraudulent. So the result, so what I'm getting at here is that, in order to ensure that our votes are proper and are honestly cast, an audit ought to show the place of origin, the process, whether or not the vote is connected to a registered voter. And I think that if there's one thing we're going to learn from the audit in Maricopa County, and by the way, there are now ongoing audits in several other states in various counties, and that includes Georgia and Pennsylvania, is that in the future, going forward, there has to be a means to ensure that a vote that is mailed in from an absentee, we have a means of verifying that that person is a registered voter. It's that simple. Now, in Massachusetts, we applied for absentee ballots and we got instructions. It says here, and I'm going to read it. These are your absentee ballot instructions. And this, again, is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is known to be a fairly liberal state, okay? This absentee ballot package sent at your request, in other words, they didn't just mail it, they didn't just send them out, they didn't paper the house. We had to request an absentee ballot, and we did. And this is what we got in return. Includes a ballot, a small ballot envelope with an affidavit printed on it that you must complete, and that included the signature, and a pre-addressed return envelope. Okay? So in other words, there was a cross signature. They would, we had to apply to the jurisdiction where we vote, the city of Boston in this case. And before they sent it to us, they looked it up and they cross-checked to see if we had been properly registered. And then when we signed it at home, they cross-checked that with a signature on file. All right. Then they go on to say, the penalty for voting or attempting to vote in violation of the absentee voting laws is a fine of not more than $10,000 and imprisonment for not more than 5 years. All right. So, they're not messing around in my state. This is a very, very serious matter. Now, let me note that voting laws and regulations were passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor. And indeed, that is how it's done in all 50 states. And the 50 states have the authority to regulate elections in that way and to put in safeguards to make sure that the voters' right to vote is not suppressed. Now, what is voter suppression? Voter suppression happens when a fraudulent vote is cast. Every time a fake vote is cast, every time somebody commits fraud, their fraudulent vote suppresses your legitimate vote. So if you vote for candidate X and then a fraudulent vote comes in voting for candidate Y, that fraudulent vote essentially cancels your legitimate vote as a citizen. You can simply do the math to know that. And one of the things that we can learn, particularly from this last election, is that it is indeed the state legislators for each of the 50 sovereign states in this union to make those kinds of regulations and to have those kinds of standards. It actually says this in black and white in the US Constitution, Article 2, that the state legislators debate and pass laws and regulations with regard to how the vote is cast and counted and how it is protected. That is the law. And there's a reason why the founding fathers of our nation put that into the Constitution. They did that because they understood that the sovereign citizens in the respective states, as they elect representatives and senators to their local legislators, they are the best arbiters for regulating their votes. It's that simple because that's where people live. Each state is slightly different, but they have an obligation to regulate those votes. Now, the principle of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the US Constitution and other laws in the Constitution do indicate clearly that state legislators cannot discriminate against any person who is a registered voter. If you are a registered voter, you have the right to vote. They can, however, across the board, set standards for registering to vote. In other words, those standards are that you are of legal voting age, which was lowered in the 1970s to 18, and that you are a citizen of the Commonwealth or the state and of the nation as such, that you're here legally, and that and that's about all. You have to prove that you reside in the state. So that way you don't have people double and triple voting, and you don't have people, like you could have a young person going to a college and then voting at the college and then also voting at home, and that kind of fraudulent behavior. So you basically, if you can prove that you are a citizen of your state and you are of legal age, you have the right to vote. It's that simple. And all these laws are doing is protecting that right. They have nothing to do, which is completely contrary to leftist propaganda, with your race, your creed, your national origin, your religion, anything like that. Nothing to do with that. If you're a citizen, you can vote. It's that simple. And that's for everyone, regardless of your background. There's no, laws that discriminated based on race. Those were thrown out, not that they were ever constitutional, which they were not, but even the fact that they existed, that was ended in 1960s with the Voter Rights Act of 1964. So, that law was completely appropriate and completely within the purview of the Constitution, which is that every citizen has a right to vote. And so, we've learned from this past election that state legislators have that power. And we've also learned that that power was overridden and violated unconstitutionally and unlawfully by various state governors, secretaries of states, judges, and even private bureaucracies. They did it quietly. They did it under the guise of responding to the pandemic. In some cases, they use that as an excuse. But the point is that they did it. And if the pandemic was an issue, then the state legislature could have taken it up and made reforms. But they didn't pay any attention to the state legislature. They just went ahead and made the laws. There are examples of that in the state of Pennsylvania, where the Secretary of State in that state, this guy Shapiro, who was helped and who was elected with monies that came in from this international oriented financier. I'm not going to mention his name, but it rhymes with the Yiddish word tsaros. Okay, I think people know who I'm talking about. He went ahead and changed laws in Pennsylvania, even up to election day, and did so in a way that was not approved by the legislature. Now, they may have been good laws. I mean, we could take a look at them, and they were not good laws. But even if they were, he had no constitutional purview to do that. And the state legislature challenged that. And it went to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the governor and secretary of state, which, then went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court mostly decided to ignore it, which is outrageous. I think there's one case that's still pending. But it shows that, in my opinion, and again, I want to be careful here because this is YouTube, there was an agenda going on there. There was a desire to change the government. There was a desire to pass the buck, because the law is clear. The Constitution says that state legislators do have that prerogative. And now they're stepping forward. It's too late for 2020, frankly, but they are stepping forward to reassert that prerogative. And that is the prerogative of us, the people. And so hopefully we can get some reforms going forward and change back to the constitutional system, so that some of the abuses that happened in 2020 don't happen again. And I think it is interesting, and I think it's worth examining why the the liberal establishment, if you will, the Democratic Party, what President Trump called the deep state, what Professor Michael Glennon calls the double government, what Dwight Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, what sociologist C. Wright Mills called the power elite. Why these forces are fighting this. Why they're trying to stop state legislators from exercising their rightful and lawful prerogative, which is to make laws to protect the votes in their states. And if people don't like the laws that the state legislators are making, elect new state legislators. Contact your state legislator, tell them you don't like it, and maybe they'll change it. That's how the system works. That's what liberals like to call democracy. And that's what's going on here. So you had abuses in certain states. Michigan was another one, where the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, simply went in fiat, totally, using powers that are not appropriate for her office. And she weakened the standard of checking signatures for absentee ballots. She said that the local county clerk no longer had to check and examine the signatures coming in from requested absentee ballots to make sure that it matched the signature on file. Instead, they could just pass it through. If it had a vague resemblance, she says, they can pass it through and cast that vote. And whether or not that resulted in corruption in certain precincts and certain districts, we don't know. We don't know who was manning those voting offices, frankly. But the point is that we shouldn't have to worry about it. There should be a law in place, and the state legislature put that law in place to give a procedure for how these votes were to be legitimized, and she undermined it. A state judge eventually overruled that and returned that power to its original source, which is the state legislature. It's too late for 2020, but it certainly does make one wonder in terms of whether or not there might have been corrupt state clerks, election clerks, who could have looked the other way and let certain ballots go through, even though they didn't really have the proper signature. And that could have happened on any side. Maybe there were corrupt Trump people in there doing this. I want to be clear here for YouTube, in case you're going to censor me. I'm not getting into the specifics. I'm talking about the mechanics. We can use our imaginations to wonder whether or not this happened and who might have been corrupt. But the problem is that it did happen, and it was corrupt by nature either way. And it was corrected, but only months after the election. And that is outrageous. Anyhow, I'm going to give out the number. You're welcome to call the program, 617-396-4958. We can discuss this and other issues. 617-396-4958. This is Charles Moscowitz, and I am doing this great program every afternoon at high noon Eastern Standard Time. And, for as long as I want, and if I get any calls, let me just also take a brief opportunity to do a little commercial break here and mention that my latest book, The Satanic Conspiracy, is available at Amazon Books. Let me hold it up for the camera so you can see what this book looks like. There it is. The Satanic Conspiracy. You can't really see mine. There it is. Yeah, my name is there. And let me hold it up for TikTok. The Satanic Conspiracy by Charles Moscowitz. Check it out. I want to thank David Whitehead from Unslaved for conducting an interview with me last week. That's a subscription. They do a great job. David Whitehead and Michael Tessarian. I recommend you check out their site. He actually really read the book, which is really unusual, and I really appreciate that. and he quoted from it. He read parts of it to me and asked me to comment. So that was a real pleasure. It was a great interview. Truly a great gentleman, great talk show host. He's up in Vancouver, Canada. Of course, I can't find it. Good covering up. I'm looking at some of the TikToks here. With these audits, is there any chance that the election can be overturned? Well, I'm not going to really comment on that because I'm on YouTube right now. I have no idea, frankly, so I shouldn't comment on it. What I will say is this. I believe in our system of laws. I believe, like John Adams said, and I'm paraphrasing, that we are a nation of laws and not men. And in that capacity, given that we have laws in place and that those laws emanate from our Constitution, which was ratified by the states and which is our law, I think we'll have to have faith that the law will work itself out. Now, there are different opinions in terms of what might happen if any of the states are, the delegations are removed, if they're decertified. Attorney Jenna Ellis, who represented President Trump during in the aftermath of the election, she has gone on record as saying that nothing will happen. The Biden administration was sworn in. Joe Biden was sworn in as president of the United States. Kamala Harris was sworn in as vice president on Inauguration Day, January 20th of this year. And there's nothing that can change that unless they're impeached. And I'm not suggesting they should be impeached, but the point is that, no, I mean, her position is that it's not going to change. I don't know. I mean, there are others who say that if a state decertifies their vote, and that's a decision made by state legislators, by the way, and if it happens in probably at least 3 of the battleground states that are now in various stages of auditing, those being Arizona, Georgia, and the big one, Pennsylvania, with some other states considering audits where there were improprieties allegedly, those being Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and possibly New Mexico. If this happens, and if these states complete audits and they then conclude that there were enough improprieties that the delegation that was selected would no longer stand as a legitimate delegation, and if they decertify those delegations, and that's uncharted water, but the question is whether they can or not. If in fact they do it and it does stand legal scrutiny and probably Supreme Court challenges, then the present candidate and the present office holder could lose enough delegations that he would not have the sufficient number to be president. And that sufficient number, I believe, is somebody can maybe call in on this one, but I think it's something like 270. And I understand that if those 3 states that I just mentioned did go through a decertification and that did stand legally, then that number would be under the 270 number. Now, the theory goes, and this is according to some legal scholars, that this would mean that the election would have to be decided in a special session of the House of Representatives. Now, the way that works, and this is how it would work, this is how it did work, by the way, in the John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson race of 1824, and in the Rutherford B. Hayes, Samuel Tilden race of 1870. What happened is that neither candidate had enough delegates, and the House of Representatives decided who was president of the United States. Now, the way that happens, my understanding, is that it's not the conventional House headed by Nancy Pelosi. That's not what happens. You have a special session in which each state sends one delegate, and that one delegate is chosen by the state legislature, and that whoever has the most votes wins. And of course, that means that you have to have 26 votes to win. Now, we don't know if it'll ever reach that point, but if it did, I think that my understanding, last I checked, is that there were 32, if not 33, state legislators that are in the hands of the Republican Party. So use your imagination, okay? I'm not saying that this would happen. I actually don't think it probably will happen. It might be too disruptive for this country, even if it was legal and lawful. But I will say this, and I think this is okay for YouTube senses. If, in fact, the Maricopa County audit does show that President Trump had won the state, and don't forget, there's only about 10,000 votes that separate the two, and Maricopa County has about 60% of the electorate in Arizona. I mean, it's the biggest county. You know, where Maricopa goes, the state goes. And we're talking about 1.2 million votes being counted there. If that happens, whether or not Biden's delegations are decertified, it is going to give impetus to the other audits, those being in Georgia and Pennsylvania and possibly the other states I mentioned. And while I do think that likely it will not change the election, frankly, personally, I would love it if it did, but I don't think that's going to happen. The fact of the matter is that the Biden administration will be done politically. It'll be over. It'll have lost all of its ability to have any legitimacy. And that I think that, combined with the fact that in a little over a year from now, during the midterms, even the most conventional thinkers and even most of the Democratic, mainstream media are acknowledging that the Republicans are going to take back the U.S. House. It just is how that works. Every 2 years there's an election, and by history, the party in power loses. That's going to also affect that. Hello, you're on the air with me. Welcome to the program. Hello. Can you hear me okay? No? All right. Thank you. Anyway, don't be shy about calling in. Let me give out the number here. 617-396-4958. You're welcome to call in. Please do. 617-396-4958. So, getting back to the sheer politics of it, the audit is supposed to release its report within the next 2 weeks to month, maybe mid-August. And those of us who are anxious about that, and I keep getting TikToks from people, why aren't they in the report? Where is it? Is it coming out? I keep making reference. Let's all be patient, They need to have everything absolutely connected. Hello, thank you for calling.
Hello.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hey, Charles. I am a TikTok follower. I follow you. I watch all your videos. I'm only actually on you live now. I just can't watch you when I'm driving. My question is, if they decertify his electoral votes for Arizona, does that mean they just take him away and it just drops his total number below 270 and we go to the Constitution where they will get the single vote, or what?
Well, thanks for asking. I mean, I was just discussing that. There are different legal theories on it. I trust that the system will work its way through. We don't know. I don't know if they can decertify it. I know they have decertified elections in the past. I'm not sure it can happen on a federal presidential level, but either way, we want the truth. We want to find out who won. And if the results show that Trump had won that state, and those results are going to come out any week now, it's going to be politically a disaster for the the Democrats. And I think it will lead to President Trump being reelected in 2024. And he's already indicated that he likely will seek a second term. So,
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry I can't be a little bit more precise, but I'm not going to pretend I know. No one does. It's uncharted territory.
Right.
But we still want the truth. That's all. That's all I want to see. I want the truth. Either way, I'll let the chips fall where they go,
Yeah, me as well, because I feel like, we voted for Trump, and whoever voted for Biden, you know what I'm saying? I just want our votes to count and not just be, it makes some voters feel like, why even vote anymore if they control everything.
Well, you know something? I think that in their heart of hearts, most people on the other side, on the Democratic side, also want the truth, because if we don't have it, our system is toast. I mean, everything is pivoting on this. We have to have an election where every vote counts equally. One man, one woman, one vote. And, we're all invested in that, regardless of where the chips fall.
Right. And like I said, not dead people votes, but, actual votes. And that's all I want to see is transparency.
Yeah.
And, it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. Me and my wife both sit here and we watch all these videos and, people call me conspiracy theorists and all this, but 95% of everything has been said has come to fruition. And I try to tell people at my work, I was like, guys, it's going to come around. Just like the election wasn't stolen in November, but guess what? Now it's showing proof that it was stolen.
What state are you from?
I live in South Carolina. I was born and raised in North Carolina, but I live in South Carolina.
Now, were there any election problems in South Carolina this time around?
Not, like I said, I'm from a small town, and everything kind of went for Trump in this state. It wasn't even an issue. It's more Georgia, Pennsylvania,
right,
Arizona, the swing states.
Well, I mean, Georgia's having some explosive news coming out, apparently, even this week, with regard to serious questions of improprieties. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, truth should come out. Like they say,
that's
the truth
all.
Will set you free. It'll free Trump back in office.
All right, listen, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Charles. Love your show, man. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. All right, take care.
All right, buddy.
All right. So you're welcome to join the program. 617-396-4958. 617-396-4958. What is on your mind this afternoon? We can shift gears a little bit and discuss a couple of other topics. I talked about the standards of absentee balloting in my own home state of Massachusetts, which is very, very vigorous. We think of Massachusetts as liberal, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because back in the day, before this election, liberals as well as conservatives demanded high standards in terms of protecting the vote. It didn't become so partisan. And I think that recent polls indicate, by the way, that most people do support that. Most people do support voter ID, for example, including most African Americans, that they don't think they don't buy this lie that there's something racist about this. It's not. In fact, if anything, these votes, protecting the integrity of the vote, protects all voters, including obviously African Americans, because if you have fake votes cast, everybody is defrauded. And in Massachusetts, it's a serious crime. Let me just read this again. This is my own absentee ballot flyer that came with my own absentee ballot here in my own state of Massachusetts. It says, read carefully before voting. Quote, this absentee ballot package sent at your request. Interesting, right? No papering in this state. Everybody had to request it. Includes a ballot a small ballot envelope with an affidavit printed on it that you must complete, and that included a signature. In other words, you're sworn to perjury that you are who you are, and then they double check it back at the clerk's office, and a pre-addressed returned envelope. And then it goes on to say, and I quote, "The penalty for voting or attempting to vote in violation of the absentee voting laws is a fine of not more than $10,000 and imprisonment for not more than 5 years." That's pretty tough stuff. You know, the state takes voter fraud pretty seriously. And I think that the voter rules that are being put in place now are simply bringing things back to the level where we can have confidence in our system. Thanks for calling. How are you?
How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. What's on your mind? Please speak up. Please speak into the mic. I can't hear you.
Okay, hold on for a minute.
All right.
I'm calling. Hello?
Yes, I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm calling from Georgia,
Yes, sir.
and I can kind of say that only thing that I really want to see is transparency. I want to make sure that every vote that was cast was legally cast.
Yes.
You
Well,
know,
that's,
you know,
I
the way
think,
that
that, let me ask you something. Is that sentiment shared by most of the liberal Democrats in Georgia?
I would say that I don't think that the sentiment is really shared in that way. I'm a black conservative,
Yep.
and it's kind of rare. And I don't understand when you ask for concrete thinking.
Now you have Vernon Jones, a black Republican running for governor. How's he doing?
A17.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, you're on the air. Are you still there?
Yes, Vernon Jones.
Yes, sir.
He's okay. What I feel about that is I think diversity matters. I think diversity matters.
Yeah.
And I know that he's just coming on the train of the conservative Republican Party, I guess. But I think that he can kind of tap into the main vein that is going on right now. Unfortunately, people are more concrete thinkers now.
Yep.
Abstract thinkers, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And they refuse to kind of listen to concrete information and to evaluate life in that way. So,
well, that's why there has to be more concrete information coming out regularly. I mean, I'm looking at an article here from the Gateway Pundit. Let me just tell you a little bit about this. It says Georgia's corrupt Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger ignored evidence, attacked President Trump, and certified fraudulent election results. Now, that's not me saying that. I'm reading an article here from the Gateway Pundit, which is a pretty solid and respected news outlet. Okay. Which says that he actually knew that there were problems right after the election. He ignored those and he went ahead and he lied.
Yes, my question is to that, as a voter of Georgia, is what is the reason? Why did he make that decision? Now we can debate on the decision itself, but what motivated him to make that decision other than going with the decision of the people?
Something that we can speculate. I have no idea. What we do know is that his office received $6 million from a group that was financed by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife personally. And that when he was asked about this, and he denied it at first, eventually he said, well, we use that money for public relations. We don't know why, though. We really don't know what the motivation is. What do you think it is?
Like I said, in politics, it can range from all kind of things. Because I would like to say that our representatives are looking out for our best interests, but they do have other interests that outweighs the interests of the people, even on the conservative side.
Oh, of course. But we need to, as citizens, understand what those are. I mean, that's the reason why we have elections, so we can sort of shake it out a little bit and find out what are their motivations. I mean, I don't trust any of them, liberal, conservative, Democrat, or Republican. I mean, this is, there are, agendas and there are motivations that are not necessarily public.
Right.
Anyway.
And I think that if a certain population gets privy to certain actions that the party is doing, they will lean more towards their interests, And I think that keeping people in the dark with information, it hinders people from growing in wealth of knowledge, wealth of materialistic things, So we have to open the door, no matter how ugly the door may be, no matter how gruesome it may be.
Yep.
You need to look at the facts.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why we have a free press in this country, and that's why. I mean, while you say this, I'm feeling like, I wonder if I'm going to get censored on YouTube, but whatever. This is why we need to have people given the opportunity to air ideas and then debate them. And if they're wrong, it'll be proven as such. Anyway, listen, thanks so much for the call. Call again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Please do call. I'm on Monday through Friday, 12 noon and on. You're welcome to join the program in this final segment here. 617-396-4958. 617-396-4958. What is on your mind this afternoon? There are a lot of breaking stories. I will tell you that one of my main sources, and it's an excellent one, is the Gateway Pundit. I look at it every day. The Hoff brothers over there are doing a great job. I also check out Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic. He's doing a tremendous job. Really, really good show. And it's still up on Apple. You can still get his podcast. You can get this podcast, by the way. I mean, if you want. I mean, not to get in a little plug there, but Charles Moscowitz Live. So anyway, let's see. Conservative talk radio host Larry Elder. He has entered the race for governor of California. Good guy. I've interviewed him in the past. Very bright, really on the right side of things. Certainly deserving of support. Now it says here, and this is just one little other issue I wanted to get into today. It says, this is from Gateway Pundit, Capitol Police will use military surveillance equipment on citizens to identify emerging threats. All right, now this is part of this business of, alleged threats from quote unquote insurrectionists, unquote. In other words, Trump supporters. They're not going after Antifa. They're not going after BLM. They're not going after, people that they would tend to agree with. They're only going after us. And now the Capitol Police have set up offices, according to the Gateway Pundit, in Florida and Texas, which is to say that, and this is allegedly to protect congressmen while they're back in their districts, which of course is something that can be done by the state police and local police authorities, assuming they need it. This is a nationalizing of policing, and that should be troubling to everyone. It is an issue that used to be troubling to the left when they used to talk about the weaponizing and the federalizing of the FBI and other state agencies. Barack Obama talked about this in a speech he delivered in August of 2016 when he was running for president. 2008, when he was running for president. He called for a national police force that would help local police, but also that would have national police powers. And it was rejected by everyone, left and right, Democrat and Republican. It was very unpopular, and it sort of disappeared. Well, now it's being resurrected under the guise of stopping, quote, the insurrectionists, unquote, if you get my drift. I think we know who they're talking about there. I don't hear a peep about this from the left. The mainstream media is not covering it. They're doing it quietly. The only reason I know about it is from the Gateway Pundit. And I will say the same thing about this that people said back in 2008 about the Obama proposal, which is that it is the implementation of a Gestapo. This is what Nazi and communist countries do. They have national police forces. The Nazis had the Gestapo. The Soviet Union had the Cheka. The East German communists had the, the Stasi. You know, some South American dictators have this. Cuba has it. It's the hallmark, the kind of the bedrock institution of a totalitarian state. And it is completely unconstitutional, or at least it runs against all traditions of American law enforcement. In the United States, traditionally, and I would suggest constitutionally, the highest law enforcement officer in the land is the local sheriff, who's usually elected. That local communities have police departments that are answerable to the mayor and to the local council, who are elected, and that their powers are limited by the local conditions that are set forth by elected officials. The FBI, and we know there are troubles with the FBI. I think we found that out recently. I'm not going to get into that right now. They don't have actual police power. They have to work with local police. They can assist, they can advise, they can gather some intelligence. We know they infiltrate, but they don't have actual outright police powers. They're not a policing authority. That is still the purview of the county sheriff and the local police department. And that's a system that preserves safety in the real sense. It doesn't enhance the police power of the state, which is what's happening now. And so this is a very troubling development. It's something that I certainly intend to follow, and it should be of concern to all of us. Where are the civil libertarians? Where are the liberals? I remember interviewing liberals back in the day who were complaining about increased power being wielded by the FBI. You don't hear them now. Really? You don't hear peep out of them. The FBI, I think, frankly, has become corrupt. Now, J. Edgar Hoover was no saint, but at least back then, they infiltrated and they went after, the mafia, the communists, the Ku Klux Klan, other organizations that were subversive and who were trying to overthrow not only the American government, but in some cases, our system of justice, our social order. They went after that, and that's what they should do. Now it's become more corrupt. It's become politicized, I would argue, since the advent of Bob Mueller, very troubling character, as FBI director, and then his protege Comey, and now this guy Wray. These guys talk about having another agenda. I don't want to get into it. It's too big a subject right now, but it's something I'm going to be following, and I just urge people to check it out. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I have a guest, I believe, lined up for tomorrow. I am doing the program Monday through Friday, 12 noon and onward. This is a live program. It broadcasts on all of the venues that carry the show: TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, VK, Picardo, Dailymotion, and Trovo. It's archived on Podomatic, which means it goes up on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, a bunch of other people. So if you want to hear the podcast, it's on Apple. It's a Monday through Friday thing. And I just would also, again, the commercial, the advertiser, if you will, is myself, the author of the book, The Satanic Conspiracy, The Spectre Haunting Mankind. Available at Amazon Books as a soft cover or as an ebook. I'm very proud of this book. It's not a big book. It's not expensive. Check it out. I get into my theories on God and society and evil. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to thank you all for joining me this afternoon. God bless you all. God bless our great country. God bless America. Thank you very much.